And so tonight we're going to look at the next in line of the companions, and that is Ali ibn Abi Talib radiallahu anhu, who is also known as Abu al-Hasan, the father of al-Hasan. And we'll talk about some of his other children shortly. So first, it's important to note here, and this was noted previously in another topic, that the order of the companions in terms of their virtue is as we have taken it up to this point, beginning with Abu Bakr as-Siddiq. And this was mentioned by a number of the great imams of the past, including Ibn Balban, in the work that we looked at of his previously. He says, the best of mankind after Allah's messenger, and of course we're including in that the prophets and messengers, and most virtuous are the following: Abu Bakr as-Siddiq, who was the first Khalifa, or the Khalifa of the Prophet ﷺ, followed by Umar ibn Khattab. He was known as Amir al-Mu'mineen, and then Uthman ibn Affan, and then fourthly is Ali ibn Abi Talib. And then after that are the remaining 10 of the companions promised paradise, and then they are also categorized by making the migration and their attendance at Badr, etc., etc. Imam Ahmad rahimahullah ta'ala, he said that Ali was the fourth in terms of his reign as well as his virtue. That it goes in that order, both in terms of the Khilafah as well as the Fadl. And whoever is to rank Ali above Abu Bakr or Omar, or gives him preference in virtue and leadership apart from lineage. Obviously, Ali has a superiority in lineage over the other companions with his close relationship, his blood relationship to the Prophet ﷺ. However, the other qualities or categories, not so much, though he is very, very highly ranked. There's no doubting that. So if a person were to do that, meaning they were saying Ali is more virtuous and is more deserving of the Khilafah than Abu Bakr, is more virtuous and deserving of the Khilafah than Omar, then this would be the trait of the innovation found with the Rafidah. And this is considered an immorality. And of course, this is so long as they are not merely blindly following. You know, there is a community that is still present today that they hold these types of views. And, you know, the general laity of that community are blindly following their leadership. And so to pass judgment on the laity is, not appropriate. Rather, it is the leaders that have arrived to these conclusions based on their own scholarly pursuit and are also proselytizing others. They're out there publicly preaching and encouraging people to adopt these types of views as doctrine. They are immoral innovators. But they are not considered disbelievers, and this was the conclusion of Imam Ibn Balban and other greats of the madhab. So having said that, and it's almost just basically repeating something that was mentioned in a different class, and I feel like that's important to constantly point that out, because it continues to be a point of contention, and it continues to be a very divisive mechanism, I guess, if you will, that kind of distinguishes different types of Muslims. Having said that, of course, Ali ibn Abi Talib, he was the son of Abdul Muttalib. The son of Abu Talib, who was the son of Abdul Muttalib. And so Ali was the cousin of the Prophet ﷺ. His mother was Fatima bint Asad ibn Hashim ibn Abdi Manaf, and the first Hashemite to give birth to a Hashemite. She accepted Islam and migrated to Al-Madinah, where she died during the lifetime of the Prophet ﷺ. So as many of you know, Ali ibn Abi Talib, he was from the first to embrace Islam. Among them was Abu Bakr as-Siddiq and Khadija radiallahu anhum ajma'in. And some of the scholars, they say that Ali was actually the very first among that group of firsts, which is hard to nail down in terms of historical account. It's hard to nail down, and so the conclusion is that he is the first of the youth, and Abu Bakr is the first of the free men, and Khadija was the first of the women, and then they have other firsts in terms of their societal position. Believe it or not, the physical description of Ali ibn Abi Talib was that he was described with a large stomach and a bald head. And there are numerous different narrations that would indicate this. However, it was mentioned by one of the greats of the past, Ibn al-Athir. He was a Shafi'i in his school of thought. And he authored a work called An-Nihaya, which basically dealt with vocabulary, if you will, of hadith that were, kind of like strange. They considered them gharib, words that were like unique words or strangely used words or uncommon words. However, he says here that Imam Ali radiallahu anhu was considered or was described as anza' sha'r lahu batan, basically like he had no hair, or he had like the top of his head was bald and he had a stomach. And it was said that the meaning of that is that he was al-anza'u min ash-shirk, right? You know, that the hair is removed. That's the word that's being used basically, that he was removed of shirk. And the batan here, that he has al-mamlu' al-batan means like a full stomach. What that actually means was, he says, min al-ilm wal-iman, that it was filled with knowledge and with faith, that he was filled with knowledge and with faith. And that's, what was said. However, the physical description is as it should be understood on a very, very apparent basis. He was very brave, Ali ibn Abi Talib. He was considered a war hero. He attended, of course, the battles with the Prophet ﷺ, and he took down, during those battles, many celebrated enemies during combat. He was there during the Battle of Badr, and he defeated Al-Walid ibn Utbah. He defeated Amr ibn Abdi Wuddin on the day of Al-Khandaq, and Marhab, who was from the heroes of Khaybar. So he was also, because of his bravery, he was a person that brought great hope to the people, especially during these hard times. And one of the narrations that demonstrate this was, of course, during the time of the Prophet ﷺ. This is Yawm Khaybar, in which the Prophet ﷺ, he says, I am going to give this standard, or this flag, if you will, tomorrow to someone that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will, by his hands, give us success. And it is someone that loves Allah and his messenger, and that is loved by Allah and his messenger. And so the people that were there, they all retired for the evening, and they were going back and forth, conversing and debating as to who would receive that standard or that flag. And so when the morning time came, the Prophet ﷺ, was surrounded by the people, all hoping that they would receive that standard of the army. And he asked for Ali ibn Abi Talib. He says, where is he at? And so they said, he's been complaining about some ailment in his eyes. And so the Prophet ﷺ sent for him, and when he came, he put spittle, his own spittle, into the eyes of Ali ibn Abi Talib, the spittle of the Prophet ﷺ. So this is one of the min khasa'is al-Nabi. This is like a unique quality of the Prophet ﷺ. This is not like a sunnah recommended medication that, you're complaining of ailments of the eye, that you start putting saliva in your eye. These are from the specific unique qualities that the Prophet ﷺ had. So anyway, he did that and found that, of course, he was relieved of that ailment as if it had not happened or occurred. And then he gave him the standard. He gave him that banner, if you will, to lead the people into battle. And this brought a great deal of hope. Ali was noted to be very intelligent. He was resolute, very prudent, and also extremely generous. He was a noteworthy zahid, or aesthetic. He refrained from worldly pursuits. He was a very, very eloquent preacher, giving khutbahs and things. And he was the first Khalifa from Banu Hashim. He was the brother of the Prophet ﷺ by way of the fraternal order, and that was the mu'akha, which the Prophet ﷺ instituted when they migrated from Mecca to Al-Madinah. He typically took one of the muhajirun and partnered them with one of the ansar, and they created this fraternity in which they would be and live as if they were blood brothers. And so the Prophet ﷺ partnered Ali with him. And also, he was the son-in-law of the Prophet ﷺ, as you may know, because Ali was married to Fatima radiallahu anha, the daughter of the Prophet ﷺ, and she gave birth to Al-Hasan. He was known as Abu al-Hasan, and Al-Hussein, and Muhassin, who passed away when he was very young. Ali ibn Abi Talib, he had numerous children, and he was married to numerous women. From his children was Muhammad ibn al-Hanafiyyah, whose mother was Khawla bin Ja'far, and she was from the tribe of Hanifa. Omar ibn Ali, and his sister Ruqayyah, who was considered al-Kubra, the elder, and they were twins, and their mother was Taghlibiyah. Remember that, these two, Omar ibn Ali and Ruqayyah. And then there was Al-Abbas ibn Ali al-Kabir, or the eldest, who was also called As-Saqa, or As-Saqa, and he was killed with Al-Hussein. His full brothers were Uthman, Ja'far, and Abdullah, and their mother was al-Banin al-Kilabiyah. That was her tribal connection. Then there was Ubaidullah and Abu Bakr, who did not have any offspring, and their mother was Layla bint Mas'ud. So here I wanted you to note Umar, and he had a son named Umar, and he had a son named Abu Bakr, right? In the event, or in the instant that someone would say, look, there were this great, disparity and disagreement between Ali ibn Abi Talib and the previous Abu Bakr and Uthman. As we talked about ranking and someone preferring one over the other, and saying that this was actually, the preference of Ali was, he saw himself superior. He had, disparaging remarks towards Abu Bakr and Omar. The question would be, then how is it that he's named his children after those great companions? And how is it that he as well has pledged his allegiance to them when they were selected or elected as the leaders? And then, from among those, examples is, with various different marriages and the like. So that's something to remember. In the event that, you're engaged in some type of conversation talking about these things with somebody that has an opposing view, you can say, look, he had kids that he named after these companions. I mean, I don't go naming my kids after my enemies, or people that I feel have transgressed and oppressed me for some reason. I'm not going to name, my son or daughter after them. Also from his offspring was Yahya ibn Ali. He died when he was small, and his mother was Asma bint Umays. Muhammad ibn Ali, who was the younger one, and he was born of a slave woman, did not have any children. There was al-Hasan and Ramla. Their mother was Sa'id bint Urwa ibn Mas'ud al-Thaqafi. There was Zainab, the youngest, I should say, Kulthum, the youngest, Ruqayyah, the youngest, Hani, Kiram, Ja'far, whose proper name was Jumana, and Salama. There was Maymuna, Khadija, Fatima, and Umama. And these were all daughters of Ali ibn Abi Talib from various other women. So he had numerous kids. A large family. He was the Khalifa, as I mentioned to you, the fourth in line. His leadership or his reign lasted for 4 years and 7 months and some days. And there are different opinions as to the number of days that it actually lasted beyond that 4 years and 7 months. And he was killed at the age of 63, the 40th year of the Hijra calendar. He was killed by a man named Abdurrahman ibn Muljim, who was considered to be from the Khawarij, who were the renegades, that obviously went rogue. And it was said that he was buried in Kufa, in an unknown location. And this basically, this is so much that can be said about Ali ibn Abi Talib, as there is enough that can be said about the previous companions. One thing to be noted is that it's been mentioned that there has been no other companion in which so many works have been produced by the scholars to collect the narrations of his virtue and his status. You find many books of tradition or narrations that are specific to Ali ibn Abi Talib. And some of the reasoning behind that is because the issue of his khilafah and all of the strife and the public turmoil that surrounded it, all of the politics that went on with it, and everything that happened and how it came undone, was such a widespread affair in the Muslim community at the time, that there was these two, very intimately opposing parties, those that were in support of Ali and those that were against them. And so, those that were against Ali ibn Abi Talib were from the Umayyad, Bani Umayyah, which was Uthman ibn Affan's tribal people. And they had gotten to such a point in their disdain for Ali ibn Abi Talib, basically because he did not act immediately once Uthman was murdered. He did not act immediately to take the murderers to task. They began to preach against him. Their disdain and disparagement of him reached the minbar. And so the scholars and the collectors of these narrations, they were producing these types of work in mass in order to counteract that, and in order to support Ali and who he was as a great companion, as the number of virtues that I mentioned. And so basically, after Ali ibn Abi Talib, this was in the 40th year of the Hijrah calendar, after he passed away, this was known as Am al-Jama'ah, which is kind of like the year of congealing the congregation, if you will. After he passed away, his son, al-Hasan, was given the Khilafah, believe it or not. And this only lasted for 6 months. Because al-Hasan, he stepped down from the position and turned it over to Muawiyah, radiallahu anhu, in order to bring about some type of unity. And that's why they called it Am al-Jama'ah, because it did, by and large, solidify the Muslim community with such a move.